welcome, and we are delighted to have you here to have a presentation in celebration of Native American Heritage Month. And it's an opportunity for us to also bring our two campuses together, and maybe three campuses, and also community members. The plus side of Zoom is that it allows us to do presentations oh yes, no worry, Leola. I got the email text that they're doing a test of the UNM alarm system, so don't be startled, anybody on campus, because it's about to go off in any second. But we're always delighted to have an opportunity to bring our campuses together and just build community and continue to have an opportunity to learn from each other. Our expertise that exists here in New Mexico is phenomenal, and really wanting to value that and celebrate all of you and the work that you do. So thank you for being here. My name is Lindsay Smart. I am up here on the North Campus in the HSC Office for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. And I also want to give some thanks to Kendra, who is always available to help with our technological and outreach and community engagement needs. So I'm really appreciative for the work that Kendra does for us. So without further ado, let me go ahead and do an introduction for our speaker before turning over the mic. Dr. Leola Tsinnajinnie Paquin, Filipina, Diné, PhD, is an associate professor in Native American Studies at the University of New Mexico. She centers her work in Indigenous educational sovereignty in relation to community well-being. She is a longtime member of the UNM ALSA Curriculum Subcommittee and the Institute for American Indian Education. Beyond UNM, she has also served as president of the American Indian Studies Association Council and on the New Mexico American Civil Liberties Union Board of Directors. She has been an active faculty mentor across undergraduate and graduate initiatives. She is a 2024-2026 UNM Presidential Teaching Fellow, focusing on faculty well-being as pedagogy. This school year, she is also serving as the Graduate Studies Faculty Fellow for Student Success. She centers her efforts through the core values of her families, communities, academic studies, and collaborations. We are delighted to have you with us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. You bought me just enough time. There was a loud alarm going off, and I have my window open because the heat is crazy. Anyways, I'm here. I'm really nervous because I see a lot of people that seen me present, and so I'm trying to offer enough new stuff and people that haven't seen me present. So, that's always nerve-wracking. My good friends. But yeah, it's good to see you all. Another disclaimer, I wore my comfortable clothes for the commute and I forgot my work clothes at home. So that's why I'm wearing my Everyone's a Lobo sweatshirt. But yeah, so everyone get comfortable, and I hope that you're able to have some good takeaways in terms of self-reflecting and thinking about, the powers and the good things that brought you here today. Acknowledge the challenges, the things we're going through, but remember that, we're a community, we're a collective community, and I don't think there's anything more powerful than those things that sustain us and brings us to do the things we do. And I'm glad that you're all invested in educational sovereignty and well-being. So with that said, I'm going to start sharing my slides. I tend to get carried away in like some of the stories. So towards the end, I might not get to some of them, but that's okay. I think I tend to speak in ways where, you kind of get the essence of what I'm trying to share. So we'll just see how things go. So this presentation is titled, can you see it okay? Yeah, okay. This presentation is titled Indigenous Educational Sovereignty and Wellbeing Through Relationality. So, as I move through the slides, I offer different articulations, understandings of these terms and these ideas. And I invite you to go back to yourself and think, well, what do these really mean for you? And these are just the articulations that I'm offering. So this picture I took I think in the middle of the summer, I think towards my birthday. This is just one of my favorite places. This is near on the Bosque in near Northern Rio Rancho. And I love it because you have the mountain view and where I like to run, it's like running along the treetops and you see the water. And it's just kind of one of my happy places. And I'll explain more about that in a little bit. So I had an experience last week where I got to go to the Association for the Study of Higher Education in Denver. And I was really focused on graduate student success and graduate student well-being. So I went to this session and it was somewhat of a workshop. And one of my favorite components of this workshop was these prompts. So draw what joy feels like. So I invite you to write this down and maybe you can draw it during the session or later when you get a chance. So for me, I drew the picture of what I just shared, the river, and I thought of it as, for me, joy is training, whatever type of training that may be. For me, a lot of the times it's walking, jogging, running, and I do it to relax, and to relax I train. But ultimately, I think what I love about it is it's having my own space. I'm still in relationship to others, so it's honoring my own sovereignty, my own agency, but also always knowing that there's a connection I'm trying to hone into as I'm running or as I'm working or whatever it is I'm doing. And so I think really that's also another way of how I understand and practice educational sovereignty and well-being. Another prompt was turquoise, red, and gray. And you'll see coincidentally, but maybe not coincidentally, that's the color of like most of this PowerPoint. And then another prompt that they asked us to follow through with was the sound of rest sounds like, and then let it continue with editing. And this is kind of what I started with. The sound of rest sounds like when the television is off and I am enjoying the company of my friends and family. So like dinner, maybe. The sound of rest sounds like having the remote control and the whole house to myself. So again, my own space, but knowing my relationship to others. And then finally, the sound of rest is the sound of completing a task or goal. So again, I invite you to write down this prompt and when you have time, really reflect on it, and hopefully that you can find some time to give yourself rest in the next few days, within the day, during winter break, at any time that makes sense for you. So in this session, the outcomes that I'm hoping for is that we'll be able to recognize our personal identities in relationship to our teaching and our learning lens. I was trying to scan the group real quick to see what representation we have. I'm thinking a lot of us are faculty and staff, but I think this all also makes sense for students, community members. We're all educators and learners in one way or another, so just center that. And then you'll be able to envision campus relationships that center well-being. So just sharing a quote from our mentor, scholar, Indigenous education practitioner, Dr. Gregory Kahete, and this is his articulation of Indigenous community and relationship. It's the place where we learn what it is to be related. It is, coming to understand the nature of our personhood and our connection to the communal soul of our people. So, I just really love the way he writes and shares and understands, not just as a Pueblo scholar, but a community scholar, an Indigenous worldwide education scholar. And I think that, whether we're of Indigenous ancestry or not, I think we can connect to this sense of communal soul. So in terms of who am I to speak on this topic, I think a lot of it goes back to the roots of my ancestors, our ancestors, and in ways that I've used my positionality in the academy to not only learn more but share more and advocate. So I know this is really, really word heavy. You don't have to try to speed through all these things, but it's just me sharing. Like when I share my land acknowledgement in my syllabus, I also share these are the things I'm trying to do to indigenize this space, to take up this space, and to advocate for our Indigenous students, for all our students. So that's what the left side, for me, it's the left side of the screen is about. But really, um, one of the things I like to highlight is that I'm also part of the running medicine community, and I'm also a baseball mom. I've learned so much from my adopted community of the Maya, and also, just being a teacher. So Dr. Kaheti shares a heart, face, and foundation metaphor. When he's talking about heart and face, a lot of it is about our identity, our community identity, but foundation, it's like our vocation, what it is we're meant to do. And so for me, ever since I graduated from college the first time, I made it a goal. Like, I want to be a teacher, because I knew how much teachers meant to me throughout my life, from kindergarten all through higher education. And so that's my foundation, and that's what a lot of what I'm sharing with you all is rooted in. And the many years of experience that I've had. It feels like just yesterday I had no experience, and today I'm like, I've been through a lot. So that's what I'm sharing. I did graduate from UNM in 2011, and I'm sharing this picture because for me it represents the different elements of, like, not just like what I represent and what I embody, but what we ourselves as faculty, staff, and students embody. We're very layered, and you see that embodied in this picture, the layeredness of who we are. Also, because I love teaching so much, that's really what I like to write about. And so, and also teaching, one of the things that I like to say is, I care so much about the well-being of our students, and that's what I like to write about. But also, like, how can we have well-being as faculty, staff, and community members? So that's been one of my main interests. It's a lifelong interest, but I've realized, I can actually take that and make that my service contribution, my research contribution to the field right now. So I think this was this yesterday, or when was November 20th? I presented on this on the 20th, whatever day that was. I think that was after the conference that I just spoke about. But so this is the opening slide. So again, as I was introduced, I'm the faculty fellow for graduate student success. And so I was able to present to grad student leaders on this topic of mental health and well-being in academia. And this quote, "You do not need to perform here," is something that really resonated with me. That was stated at the conference that I went to in Denver. This was my first time going to the conference, so I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that there was a lot of effort to, what they say, indigenize this conference. And it's not an Indigenous focused conference, but to me, when I arrived at this conference, it's not just indigenized, but it was very welcoming, in the sense that this was the statement that was shared right off the bat. You do not need to perform here. And my sense is that I think that probably resonates with most of us. We always feel like we're having to perform in one way or another. And maybe it doesn't resonate with other people because they've never had that need to feel like they're performing, that they're code switching or anything like that. Or maybe it doesn't resonate with us because we feel like, no, we always have to perform it. It's just a fact of life. It's a survival mechanism. But for me, I feel like this is a good reference point into how we're feeling about the situation we're at home or in life or in the academy, whether or not we have to feel that need to perform. So this is one thing that that I try to understand, when I'm teaching, is letting my students know, like, these are the strategies that we need to have for success. And at this moment, don't perform, or at this moment, this is what you need to know to be able to perform when you go to spaces that are not necessarily safe. So this was Susana Munoz from the Colorado State University. This is from her, and she's done a lot of great work that I'm just now learning about, but I'm going to make an effort to learn more. So in a nutshell, with all of this, all this information that I'm experiencing and trying to collect, these are my reflections as of today. Definitely, I'm very proud to always recognize that I come from, on my maternal side, Filipino immigrant grandparents, and also Diné paternal grandparents rooted in this land. So families that have traveled, but are still rooted and connected to our ancestors, and families that have survived colonization and figured out, how to perform and how to not perform when the time is right. Also, I'm a first generation graduate student and a first generation academic. That's important to me because my kids are not going to be first generation. If they choose to decide to become graduate students or academics, they're not going to be first generation. They're comfortable. They know the best parts of campus, and they're comfortable here. So that matters, that generational history and understandings and presence matter. So our ways of being matter, our positions of power or lack of power in terms of reflections in the curriculum and leadership, but maybe we have a different type of power that matters. And again, we love to use the word positionality in Indigenous education, Native studies, and and beyond. I know a lot of us use that term, but that's one that my students, alumni that come back to us, they always say, I like how Native studies teaches us about understanding positionality, because that's one of the tools that's really, help them navigate systems outside of these safe spaces. And then I share this 1990s Lobo because in the 90s is like, I feel like when I really dug my heels into, like, yeah, I'm a Lobo. I love the Lobos. And that's another thing I really want to recognize about this community here. We're here at the University of New Mexico for a reason. There's really special things that we do here at UNM North Campus, our branch campuses throughout the state and beyond. And I also want to recognize that. So I've worked a lot with the Center for Teaching and Learning and articulating what is it I want to do in terms of pedagogy as well-being, and they've helped me create these terms, bringing our hearts to teaching and learning, and considering these questions of what are ways in which we have experienced teaching and learning, the good ways, the bad ways, the ways we want to replicate, the ways we want to change. What are the ways that we think our students have experienced learning? A lot of those ways have not been good. Some of them have been good. And it's important for us to allow our students to recognize that as well. And then finally, how can bringing our hearts to teaching and learning make a difference for our layered lives? So this summer, I really had some wonderful experiences with my sister and our colleague. So Lonnie, I believe she's a professor in community and regional planning, and has really found a way to bring her STEM education background that she made happen. She has a PhD in hydrology, but she's brought it to this place of centering community, and she's been able to platform this expertise into getting an NSF grant that she allowed me to partner with her on, and also our partners in Torreon and Tuskegee and Chickasaw Nation and the University of Oklahoma. And through this, we were able to create some summer internship experiences that I feel like really reflect bringing our hearts to teaching and learning. And so the top picture is us exploring the springs in and near our community of Torreon, not Nalgene. We went with our community partner, research assistant, and an NAS PhD student, Mario Atencio. He showed us some natural springs, some wells. And from this vantage point, we're all happy, and we experienced, sampling water, but within this view, we could also see the oil and well drilling that's taking place, the fracking that's taking place, our homes, all in one vantage point. We also got to experience the ancestral knowledge of creating a waffle garden, and I can't even keep what the kind of cactus. It's not a cactus, but it's that one plant that you can't you're not supposed to be able to like kill, but I can't keep it alive. But that's my experience with planting versus what I was able to, me and Lonnie and the interns were able to experience is the Zuni knowledge of creating waffle gardens and being able to volunteer. Lonnie, can you write the name of the place that we went to? Suya, I think, Suya Farms. So we got to experience, getting our hands into the earth and understanding what it means to be able to learn to grow, and not just like as a metaphor. We like to use metaphors, but I've never actually like gotten my hands into the earth to do what I was able to experience this summer. So those are just examples, recent examples of ways in which I've been able to bring my heart to teaching and learning. And then the picture, I think that's from the first day of school, sending my sons off, and, just having that trust, or maybe not having that trust, to send those that are most important to me off to a learning setting where I know that they're not going to be taught by Indigenous educators, and what's my responsibility as a mother to instill in them a strong enough grounding to ask good questions, to be strong in who they are as they move forward. So it's not just them, but again, we feel that sense of who are we and what are the pathways we're going to walk at whatever age and whatever school system we're entering. So I think what I've gathered is it's important to read the room with care. And from what I've learned, this isn't common practice. Unfortunately, it's not common practice for our Indigenous students to go to departments where they feel seen and heard and recognized, not just in the syllabus and the curriculum, in the discussion points, but also when they're trying to share, when they're trying to teach and engage with their peers and their professors. Oftentimes they're shut down. And so with being shut down, with the lack of recognition and understanding of their presence, they're just kind of moving through the system until maybe they aren't. And they leave, their programs. And I think this is unfortunately really common. So it seems so simple to read the room with care, but it's something that unfortunately, like I said, it isn't happening across our classrooms and across our teaching spaces. Being able to establish relationships with our students and with one another is important. Understanding also the relationships they have outside of schools is also really important. What are their caregiving responsibilities? Maybe they're taking care of their parents, their grandparents, their own children, or they're caregivers to their communities. What are those responsibilities? Or maybe they're coaches. And also just what's going on in terms of their health. Are their parents trying to survive cancer? Are they themselves trying to survive cancer? Like, what goals are they trying to make it through, to live another day, to live to the end of the year, to be able to feed their families themselves, to maintain their housing. So it's a reminder to us to always read the room with care. And at the same time, I know we're constantly we constantly have these benchmarks, these evaluations, these standards of measurement that we're expected to uphold. But can we question that? And if so, how can we question that? Dr. Charlie Amaya from the conference, they posed a question: what is demanded of you as faculty to maintain the status quo? So, let's question that, and let's consider that, and let's think about their next question. Well, if we don't feel great about it, how are you empowered to say no? How much room do we have to say, no, I'm not going to do that? Or maybe we're going to draw the line and say, you know what? We're going to change this because this does not make me feel good. And so in this particular session, the panel spoke about, like research in programs like education. We have our standard 5-chapter dissertation: introduction, literature review, methodology, findings, and discussion. And, that's just the way it is. But in this session, they talked about changing it to where, yeah, we're kind of fulfilling those obligations, but maybe we're using cultural understandings of the 5-chapter dissertation. And when it's beyond a metaphor, but one framework they use is a Hogan framework. Another one was a green chili framework, so growing green chili, building a Hogan. Another one was a chapter house framework, so chapter house meetings. What do you need to do to meet a forum, and so on. So it's just an example of there's different ways to make these Western benchmarks culturally relevant. And not just like twist it, but maybe center the cultural relevancy and make the institutional guidelines maybe the secondary aspect of it. So one other thing that I feel like it's really important when it comes to Native American studies, Native student well-being, all student well-being, is recognizing where we're at in the political climate. Whose sense of humanness and value is being understood and recognized, whose sense of humanity is not being recognized, who is being dehumanized, how and why and how is this, just a cycle in the way it's always played out. But what can we do about it? What zones, Loma, Wyman, and McCarty have the theory, safety zone theory. How can we use these zones of safety? For example, what we're doing right now, how can we use these safety zones to maintain our solidarity and our perseverance? How can we maintain this sense of safety, sense of security, and planning for the future? Also understanding when it comes to our colleagues and our students whose funding is in danger. What does this mean? So not just like what does losing grant funding mean to us and our colleagues, but what does it mean to our students and their students and the trajectories that they had planned? So one colleague I have from ASU, she had an NSF race and equity grant focused on marketplaces, on flea markets, and she lost that funding. And that was her pathway, one of her pathways to tenure, and one of the pathways for her students, to navigate academia. What does that mean? And what can we do about it? And how can we lean into the resources we still have to support one another? My brother also, he doesn't have fundings that's directly tied to the federal government, but he's still being affected by that. And in so doing, my nieces and nephews are being affected by it. My friends in the BIE, they were furloughed, and what does that mean, for the period of time when they didn't have a paycheck coming in? And I will say, as a testament to their resiliency, what did they do? They focused on, what they're doing in terms of giving back to the community. So we're all relatives, and we're all doing things that are greater than this political climate, just like our ancestors have done throughout history. So, I want to paint the picture of, like, the clear the clear threat to humanity we're experiencing, our students are experiencing, our communities are experiencing, but reiterate, we are more than that, and we have more power than what's happening right now, because it's happened before. So one clear example, I think, of how all of this intersects is the fracking that's happening throughout our land, but in particular, focusing on the community of, not the community, but the lands of the Greater Chaco area. There's a lot of movement and counter movement that's happening right now in terms of not only protecting the land, and in turn protecting our children and our communities and our histories, and the air we breathe, the land we plant on, the water we drink. And so a lot of effort is happening right now on the national scale, the local scale, and also within our classrooms. One of the severe gaps we have right now is like, what is the impact on our health and well-being? And so if you're all looking for research topics that are directly related to this topic, researching health impacts of fracking under Greater Chaco area is something that really needs to be explored, and also supporting the advocacy of the Greater Chaco Coalition. It's really important right now. And so my contribution in that is teaching about it and trying to create more learning tools alongside my students. This picture was taken a few years ago, but it's an ongoing project that we're continuing on in Native American studies and beyond. So just again, another pause for reflection, and recognizing that you all are coming in with challenges and gifts, and it's not always about what separates us, but what are our shared values and what are our shared challenges. And furthermore, looking for ourselves, what can we do to take care of ourselves and model this for those around us. So in other words, we need to normalize well-being. We have to stop normalizing pushing ourselves beyond our limits, because what I see happening to myself or my friends or my colleagues is, once we push ourselves beyond our limits, then we get COVID, then something else happens with our physical health, our mental health. And if we don't centralize and normalize our well-being, we can't do the wonderful things that you all are doing. So, once we have that, what can we do to care for those around us within our capacities? So at this point, I just wanted to, I'll do a time check. Okay, a little over halfway. Share some examples that I've learned. A lot of this comes from the Student Experience Project and other fellowships I've been a part of, that I've tried to to create in terms of making me a better instructor and teacher and colleague. But so these are just some more prompts and hopefully some practical tools that I wanted to share. So create time and space for students to introduce themselves to the classroom community. I know a lot of us already do that, but I just wanted to reiterate, this is important. This isn't just a best practice from where we're at, but these are things that I've seen in the research that I see nationwide. It's really important. It's really central to having a community that begins at the beginning of the semester, that we're all in it together at the end of the semester, and we're in it after that as a lifelong network. So asking your students, what communities do they belong to? Name some example. So, not just like what, where they grew up, or the communities of their grandparents or their family histories, but also maybe it's their running community. Maybe it's their church community. Maybe it's their volunteer community. What are all the ways that students make sense of who they are, and how can we also honor it in their classrooms? And what is it, why are they here? What do they want to do with their careers, with their degrees? And coming back to, this is Native American Heritage Month. Native students, I would, for the most part, our Native students, it's not just about like their individual pathway, it's how their individual pathway is tied to their history, their future, and how they want to give back, especially in the field of healthcare. There's probably a reason that students chose to pursue their nursing degrees, their medical degrees, their emergency technician certificates at UNM. It's because they want to serve these communities, in particular, their own communities. Keep development of relationship building constant. You can call it networking if you want. So every class period, reflect upon how everyone is doing in terms of their well-being, and their connections to one another. And I find that creating space in class for students to socialize and connect with one another, not just in reference to what they're learning, but what they're experiencing outside of school, that's really huge. So not only do this like informally, but put it in your syllabus. Put the link to Lobo Wellbeing at the top of your syllabus, or remind them as often as possible. These are the resources. If there's something that you're experiencing, use yourself as a referral mechanism, or if you have the capacity to help students, navigate what they're experiencing, do that. If you don't have the capacity, make sure, that you're sharing and connecting with others who can, help the students. Also consider building affinity groups in Native studies, because we have so many students from um, from from uh, from tribal nations. Sometimes I'll put students in their respective, as a Pueblo group or Navajo group, Apache group, or it could also be groups that love running, groups, I'm sorry, I keep using the running example, groups that love baseball, groups that love basketball, football, groups that love outdoor recreation, and it can be done using online groups as well, inside and outside. I'm going to talk more about online learning in a bit, but also know your student story threads, like what's going on, what's going on with their parents, or what have they been working on as a personal goal. So the reason I keep using running as an example is because my boys had cross-country goals, and throughout the fall, they had those goals. And when I met with their teachers for parent conferences last week, I shared with them, this is what's going on in their life outside of school. And the teachers both said, we had no idea, thanks for sharing. So that doesn't just have to happen in elementary, but also within UNM. How can we continue to know our students' stories and help them, be who they are holistically, be
Have a tape measure.
flexible. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I had all stuff stacked for this morning, and then I left early and forgot it.
Oops. That's all right. Taking a drink of water time. Be flexible while providing structure. And that's something that I know a lot of us as faculty are struggling with, because I find it I find students be so grateful, with flexibility and working around deadlines. And at the same time, I know there's a cutoff point where you have to have that structure. But so wherever that sweet spot is for you, I think give yourself permission to do what works for you. So use and/or encourage representation in your syllabus and assignments. So I was using the example of Jeremiah, that's a pseudonym. He talked about how, there was one, this is a different department, but there was a Native scholar in his syllabus, and he felt like that was nice, but it really just felt like a token reference in terms of using Native scholars in their syllabus. And so I think when sometimes what I do is I'll ask students, okay, help me build this module, and what reading do you want to contribute? So if you feel like this isn't necessarily something you feel comfortable with, it could take the form of like, okay, students, you help build their learning outcomes for this module or this set of weeks. But ultimately, we're teaching students that who they are is valued in the academy. So just a reminder point. So now I'm going to turn to ways that I feel like the field of NAS is intersecting with health, with the medical side, health side, North Campus side. And so I asked the question, what does this look like in Native American studies? And this slide is a slide that I shared when Dr. Anthony Flegg and I presented to the medical campus, their version of North Campus at the University of Louisville a couple of years ago, and it was hosted by their diversity initiative faculty. So for this session that I shared with them, I said, participants will be able to describe the importance of centering Indigenous experiences in healthcare and well-being. And so this is the book that I think is going to be raffled off in this session. And I have a chapter in this book on Indigenous health and justice. So I can definitely update this slide. This was from a couple of years ago, but these are just some of our students from a couple of years ago that were working on, on things that both engaged health and well-being and Native American studies. Kira received an award from Mayor Travis Thompson, put on this, like one of the most amazing conferences I've ever gone to on traditions of endurance. So it was a running conference. Alicia Gallegos, she was trained in asset mapping, and she was highlighted through American Indian Student Services. And she's the one of the students that really helped me dig deeper into understanding the importance of, bringing fracking into NAS curriculum, land protection and fracking. And then Monica Allen put together a list of resources. And I think that's one of the things that that we're really trying to figure out how to centralize and create a map for. So if any of you have a good website to how we kind of map out resources that Native students especially can access when it comes to healthcare, that's something I've been trying to collect on. So in terms of policy and educational sovereignty, a big movement right now is really fighting for the Yazi Martinez, the Yazi platform of what does transforming education in New Mexico really look like? And in terms of what it shouldn't look like is, we use the words of Dr. Sweeney, and he talked about, our educational experiences as Native people has always been, separate. We can't truly be ourselves at all times if in many school systems, not all school systems, but in many classrooms, for us as Native people, who we are is not truly reflected in the classroom. I know there are some schools and many classrooms that do that, but for the most part, that's not the case. And that's why we had Yazi Martinez, and we're still fighting for Yazi Martinez. So, this picture shares some authors from the book edited by Wendy Gray Eyes, Lloyd Lee, and Glenaba Martinez on Yazi Martinez, and then Wilhelmina Yazi and Preston Sanchez. I took a selfie with them because, they're they're just amazing people, like really fighting for educational sovereignty within New Mexico schools. And it doesn't just have to, the whole point of educational sovereignty is it is referencing public schools, but it's also referencing the educational sovereignty we have for ourselves as parents, as communities, as people who practice inside and outside the academy, and understanding that we all have our histories, whether it be our Indigenous history, Navajo Pueblo history. We all have our core values, our family values, our community values, and for one of the ways that I really see this playing out is through running, not just in running medicine, but if you go to any race, I would say community race, USATF race, you see Native families coming together in all kinds of in all kinds of groups. So whether it be NB3, Acoma, Walatoa, Nat-Nalgene, and running medicine, and there's this common understanding that running, it's not just running as competition and sport, but it's running as resistance and well-being. So what does educational sovereignty really mean? And I think it's creating our own measurements of success. It's understanding that education, it's connected to ceremony, it's connected to gifts, it's connected to prayer, and it's how we practice all of those good things. I won't read this whole quote. So one of the things I wanted to highlight, especially for our friends in healthcare and health degrees, is this what I've been working on of this idea of virtue rural Indigenous education. In NAS, we have a whole online degree program. And in this online degree program, we really nurture creating a sense of community and creating a sense of student relationships to where they're at. And I call that virtue rural Indigenous education. So connecting learners through virtues of place while we navigate the reality that we're all operating in complex notions of movement, connectivity, and relationality with each other and our lands. And this is really special to me to share right now because I know several of my very close friends have gone through, have completed the online nursing degree program through UNM. And I've just seen how significant it has been for my friends to be able to complete this degree while working in places that serve their communities, while being able to take care of their families from their homes by being able to complete this online degree program. So I think it's a really, really great testament to UNM North Campus, to all the initiatives that everyone's engaged in terms of bringing access to really good quality programs to our communities and our homes. I asked my friend, my buddy, my BFF, Antoinette Toya, if I could also give her a shout out because she completed a Master's of Public Health from the University of Arizona. And I just saw how important it was for her, how significant it was for her to be able to earn a degree from my alma mater, University of Arizona, being here. So she was able to take care of her family, take care of her community, all of her responsibilities, all the while completing a master's in public health. So these programs are really, really significant. But I will say it's also important to understand the realities that we're facing as learners, as teachers, and the limitations we have. And through my platform, like social media, on my personal Facebook, I always have to remind my friends and my family and my community members that online learning and teaching is really challenging. It's hard. So give our students space and grace, not our students, give our family members space and grace when it comes to online learning and teaching, because it's really hard to learn and teach from home. So with that said, I wanted to share one of the favorite projects that I have in my Intro to Native American Studies class, because I get a lot of pre-med or pre-health and nursing students. They're in my class because it fulfills diversity requirements, or it fulfills a gen ed requirement. So it's great because I get to see all kinds of students. So I have this assignment where students design a community wellness project, and they're given this like $30 million budget to work with, and the goal is for them to implement what they've learned in NAS from an NAS lens into community wellness. And so one of the affinity groups that I create is community care students. So all like my students that are focused on health careers, I put them together and I say, okay, your focus is on creating a wellness project for the Albuquerque area, focus on Indigenous health. And I love it because so one of the students, one of the groups created this Med on the Move hypothetical healthcare initiative or healthcare project. So their focus was on creating access to culturally appropriate healthcare here in Albuquerque. And one of the needs they identified was the need to make healthcare mobile. And so it includes all like the regular things that you would include in terms of healthcare services, but also building capacity, so building scholarships. So I really want to recognize and honor initiatives, you know, like from the Center for Native American Health and Native Health Initiative, all the things that good people are doing to create a sense of being and belonging here at UNM. And this is recognized by students as well. This is important. Youth-oriented education, so going into the schools, beginning it there. And then this is just in summary from all students: core values, community, identity, family, spirituality, oral history. All these things are included in what a community of well-being looks like. So recommendations to improve community wellness. So, you know, all the good things that everyone's working on. These are things that I think that we could reiterate or maybe haven't been explored yet. I think I've seen all of this in one way or another, but prevention and education, healthier food options, advocacy for policy change, that's a big one, integration of traditional and modern healing practices, youth empowerment and cultural mentorship. So, you know, it very much is encompassing a lot, everything we possibly can. Oh, so this is the flyer from that presentation I was saying that Dr. Flegg and I did at the School of Medicine. Just highlights from the running community. And I think now I'm starting to restate the things I've already stated. So my daughter Mia, she's in pre-nursing. She's also an NAS major or minor/major. And she did the community wellness project, and I had her present with me recently, and she just reiterated all the things I just shared, especially when it comes to being able to be an online student and being fully engaged with her community as well. So just a few more examples of teaching on well-being relationships. So being able to have well-being time in our classrooms. I just reiterating things I've shared and some final reflection questions. What are the prayers and pathways that you walk? What are your sources of knowledge? How can you embody these values in your positions of privilege in academia and beyond? And so I guess, you know, for me, that's what I'm trying to do, use this position of privilege to reiterate and reshare the experiences of my colleagues, my students, what I've learned along the way. Um, I will be leading for faculty a community of practice. You can sign up for it through the Center of Teaching and Learning. These are the things that we're going to be talking about. You can feel free to email me. I know I'm out of time for the link because I know it's kind of hard to, like, this isn't an active link on the screen. But with that said, I hope the takeaways from this are, you know, we all care about one another and our students. With everything that's going on, this should be our pedagogy right now. Don't make things harder than they have to be. Read the room with care. And again, I'm just really grateful for this opportunity and for all of you and all that you do. And I'll end there. I'm so sorry.
No, this
didn't
is
leave
wonderful.
time for questions and all that.
Well, this is not the end of our ability to connect with you. I think that's the nice thing is that people will be able to reach out, and this is hopefully just the start. So I do want to open it. If there's things that people want to comment or question, I'll pause and see what's out there. It's like exploding hand clouds. I don't know how to make my computer do that. I think one just logistical thing, if you have a handout for that, or maybe we can make one, Kendra, for the Loba Wellbeing, because sometime writing practice, because sometimes some of the emails don't ever officially make it into our inboxes up on North Campus, or they make it over here and they're not attended to unless we send it a larger way. We want to make sure that our faculty here can join that if they haven't had a chance to look at it. There were so many overlaps that I'm just thinking that I'll be reaching out. I mean, the well-being part, the connecting with the community, and the ways to connect with our CTL here and our CPL, the continuous professional learning, maybe thinking about how to implement some of these strategies in workshops for our health professions faculty. Anyone else have any question, comment? All right. Well, with that, you know where to reach Leola. If you don't, reach out to me and we will connect you. I hope that you do find some ways to make connections around this work and the work that you do. And thank you all for joining us today in celebration of Native American Heritage Month. And take care.